Hi, it's Anna here, and there's a topic that I want to dive into today, which I feel is very important in this day and age where we are constantly living in an age where there's a lot to ponder, there's a lot to filter, there is a lot in general out in the outside world that we as human beings get exposed to, and it's a very confronting world to see the atrocities in the world at large. But that's always been the case, but now because of social media there is so much going on, and there is also a lot of things going on that we aren't truly aware of. And so this subject that I want to touch upon is very important because it's something that can make you or break you as a person. And I want to talk a little bit about it so that I can maybe shed a light on something that you have been thinking or believing in or even feeling, and you have not really known how to move forward in this area. And that's about freedom of speech. What does that look like when you believe in something, when your truth is the main denominator, and how do you express it in a way that is true to you? Because in this day and age, as you probably already know, it's a very sensitive topic. Everything is a sensitive topic, so you may feel like something matters inside of you and you may not know how to share it because what you see on the outside, how you see people reacting to other people's opinions, other people's truths, it scares you because how they are reacting is with extreme aggressivity, and also they are not open to hear another person's point of view. That's what's happening, and it's seeming to be even more challenging to voice your truth, to voice your opinion, to voice a view which is completely different than the status quo, because that's the reality. And how do you then, you as an individual, so you have your truth is what you feel inside for you. And also I want to emphasize, if you feel that something is off, that's your truth as well. On an energetic, on an emotional level, when something feels off, you just feel it. We are instinctual beings, we're not robots. So when you feel like something is off, how do you then express it? Or say, I'll give you a more realistic perspective, a more realistic experience. Like, say you have a friend and you just feel like something's going on with them that you can't quite put it, quite understand what's going on, but you just feel like something's off and they're not really okay. Then how do you handle that situation? So first of all, okay, you feel something is off, yes. Is that because it's coming from you, or is that because it's coming from them? So that's tip number one. How can you analyze this feeling? Is it coming from you or is it coming from them? This is very important when you self-analyze yourself, because sometimes we can get triggered. That's the reality. And if we get triggered, our own feelings get in the way of our truth. They get in the way of what's really going on underneath. So we need to be the ones that are diving deep into what's really going on. And say, in this example, you feel like something's off with your friend. You just are not quite sure how to go about it. But where is this coming from? Is this coming from you, that you feel off within yourself already? Or is this coming actually from the other person? Once you've identified where it's coming from, then you can begin to go to the next step, which is step 2. So this is extremely important. So in any case, what would you do? Would you then reach out to the person, your friend in this case? Will you, how will you respond to this person? Will you first go, I'm sorry, but I just don't feel right within myself, and I feel like there's something going on with you. How are you? Or would you like jump straight into it and ask them what's going on? So it's different ways of communicating. One, you're taking responsibility. Okay, you feel off, there's something not quite right, and you can also bring up like evidence if you feel like something's off with your friend and it's clear in how they have been behaving or how they have been communicating with you that something does feel off. Then you can bring up these facts. This is an example. So, how do you operate in that instance? How do you then communicate your feeling that something is off to that friend? So the reason that I'm giving you such a practical real life example is because these experiences is the real deal of how we deal with ourselves and then how we connect and communicate with other people. Say, in another instance, you're feeling something off, but then in yourself, you're triggered. So what happens is that you feel defensive and you will, act towards that person in a different way. You will communicate in a completely different way. That's the same thing. If someone has a different opinion, someone has a different reality, someone has a different truth than you, because you will get triggered within yourself by your own thing, whatever is going on. So I want to highlight that whenever anyone, even myself, is getting triggered, I know it is my responsibility how I handle it. And I know this trigger has nothing to do with the other person. This has something to do with me. It's touching something deep within me. So once you face yourself in that way, it will be a little bit more smoother in how you address what's going on with you, but then how you connect to another person, how you communicate. If you're already triggered from the get-go, even if nothing is shared, this is going to greatly influence how you then connect to whatever's going on to then communicate to the other person. This is human behavior. This is human 101, but we don't really look at it from the perspective of taking responsibility for ourselves, of going inward and what's going on inside. This is human development. This is human growth. And this helps you to be first aware and open, yes, of yourself, but then open to another human being and what they're going through, open to their own truth, because we all have a different truth. Of course, there is, one universal truth, but what is that today? What is that? Because we are all having our own experience, we are all having our own journey, our own lives, and our truth, it feels completely different to another person. And of course, then you have, what is truth? That can, that opens up a can of many answers to everyone. But really, because we're not seeing where we're operating from in the first place, so we think, like, for instance, we are very compassionate, but actually, once we dive underneath, we're not that compassionate at all. What makes being a compassionate person anyway? When we begin to investigate how we are, we're not that compassionate. And then we lie and pretend that we're compassionate. So, this, it's not wrong. It's unearthing who we are, what's going on inside. We all have our protective mechanisms. But once you get into identifying underneath, what is going on within you, then if you're going to communicate to another human being, you can figure out how best to communicate to that human being, how to connect to them in a respectful way, and not coming from a place of being triggered, of being in fear, of, this is how arguments commence, of course, but then this is how, if you have a different view, and you come along, and you share your view, and someone comes along and they are triggered, they are triggered, yes, but then they get so upset by it, and then you get upset by it, and before you know it, you've lost the train of thought of what you were sharing. So, and there's no one to blame here. We're all equally responsible for what we are creating. We're equally responsible for experiencing this reality. The game changer is when you discover where you are at, where you're operating from, whether your trigger, whether you really want to use that trigger to blow a bomb into someone else's life, and whether, putting a different view or perspective is going to throw another bomb onto them, because that's what happens in this day and age. And whether you are actually open for yourself, or you open to hearing someone's view, or you're open to hearing someone's truth of what they're going through. Because I can guarantee it, when you are open and you hear them, it's a huge awakening. It's completely the opposite experience than when you come into that communication conversation and you're triggered. They're going to get triggered, and you end up losing the whole conversation, and before you know it, you're hating on each other, and the human connection that was there to begin with, you've lost that. That is how relationships end. Do you really want a relationship to end just because of that? Because you can actually connect with someone on a whole other level if you are aware of what's going on inside of you, if you take responsibility, and then you choose how you want to connect to that person. Not because, this is very important what I'm about to say, not because you want to please them. This is nothing to do with that. It's because you have taken responsibility, you're an adult, and now you can come from a place of where you are at. If you're open, if you figured out, okay, I have some issues with this, how do I, back to the example, how I can communicate to my friend that I feel like something is off and something's not right? Do I want to withhold this information, or do I want to reach out to her? I mean, how many times do we withhold information because we're too scared to reach out? And this is where the work is. If you're scared to reach out, this is within you. Is this fear coming from you? Is it coming from them? Where is it coming from? But you don't need to spend a long time trying to investigate everything. You just need to go, okay, I don't feel good with this situation. Where is this coming from? It's very instinctual. If this feeling offness is coming from within you, then how will you communicate? I mean, will you choose to communicate to that person if it's coming from within you? Is it from your own fear? So then we've established it's from your own fear. Then you can do some work around that, around that. Then you can go to a therapist, go to a coach, go to someone that you don't know. It's probably the right answer, because someone who you do know will only feed back to you what you already know, will not shed the light of the truth of who you are. So when you have someone who is completely new, from a different perspective, they can see what's going on. So, but make sure that you find the right person, because not everyone can and will see a person as a whole, and they have their own prejudices. They have their own fears inside. A therapist can have their own fears, other agendas going on inside. So you just need to trust that you have found the right person, or you want to have the right person. And so it is important that you take responsibility. And taking responsibility, even in this case, having support, it is helpful if it is the right person who can see you as a whole, if you cannot see it yourself. And then, if you still feel like reaching out to that friend, because after you've investigated in yourself, you've taken responsibility, I'm feeling off because, okay, I get that, but now I really still want to, reach out to that friend, because your voice matters. It does. Your voice matters if it is of a matter that really evokes something within you. So if this friend is, if something's going on with this friend and you've left it too late because you had fear in you, you were triggered, etc., and you didn't take responsibility both for yourself and for communicating with this friend, then you will feel a lot more, blame, guilt, etc. But if you decide to take action, how do you then take the action? How then you communicate to that friend, to that person? It might be that you end up helping her in a huge way. It might be, nothing's going on, but at least you have voiced, what you felt, even if it's completely wrong. Have no shame, have no fear. This is just a way that you can begin to understand, where are you doing this in your life right now, where you're feeling like something's off and you're not speaking up. And remember, speaking up is going to look like completely different from you to me, because of where you are at. And also, you want to do it in the way where you are balanced and where you're not triggered, like I've shared. Where you're not triggered, it's not going to cause, like you're dropping a bomb, it's not going to cause a war. And where you're, grounded in the knowing that this is actually, how you feel. It's the same with the truth. If you believe in something, if your truth is, to be and live in a certain way, this is what's going on for you. And like, say, I've seen a lot of people do, they then go in, they want others to be on the same level as them. So then they go and push and impose their own truths and beliefs on another person, when that other person doesn't want to hear what their own views and beliefs are. Because the thing is, people just want to be free to be themselves and express their own views without feeling like they're going to be threatened or subjected to abuse or being shoved and pushed into something that they don't agree with. So why not ask questions instead? Why is it so important that you push your own view on them? Why do you need to make that so? You can find people who agree with your own view. You can find people who agree with your own way of living. And then there is no restriction, there is no pushing. So I know I've probably jumped out of the main theme that I was talking about, but I was just giving you a little bit of a backdrop of how this can play out in society with different groups, and what it can look like. And what happens when you do take responsibility for feeling something within you, and you don't feel like you need to push it on someone, but really you're communicating from a way of neutrality, stableness, and that you're not out there to get something in return. You're not out there to push anything on anyone. You're just, like, say with the example that I gave, you're just really concerned for this friend because it feels off after you have investigated yourself, and now you will share with this friend. It can be so natural. It doesn't have to be so so forced, because it's not. I mean, how do you communicate that to your friend? That's what I want to know. When something feels off, even if it has nothing to do with a friend, imagine if it's got your own life. It's got everything to do with your own life. You go to the doctor, okay, and the doctor tells you something, and something just snaps. What happens then? How do you react? Of course, if something snaps, immediately you're triggered, yes, but then how do you respond to that? Do you start shouting at them? Do you say thank you? Okay, but this doesn't resonate with me. You know, it can be so subtle and mature. At the same time, it can just go like that, and then, you know, you're like a bomb. So it's important to understand where you are at if you're being triggered, and then how do you then communicate that to other people without passing the blame onto them, because it's absolutely nothing to do with them. What is going on within you has everything to do with you, and that is what I'm learning, deep learning. And so I wanted to share that knowledge, share that wisdom, because we're not saints. I'm not a saint. I'm not an angel. We're not Buddhas. This is real life, and how we deal with ourselves within ourselves, then everything that's going on within ourselves, how we deal with ourselves, it's how we deal with other people. It's how we communicate with other people. There's a lot of unsung, you know, voices inside of ourselves, and it's always really good when we start to get aware of those voices inside of ourselves, because it gives us back our power. Yes, there are voices that we're ashamed of, we're scared of, we don't even knew that they existed there, but at least now we're getting to discover those voices, and that, I think, is priceless. It's essential. So if you actually need some support around this, in diving into all of those voices, you can either come to my women's retreat in Amsterdam on the 16th of November. I'll post the link below. If you're not in Amsterdam, which I know a lot of you are not in Amsterdam, I invite you to come on a consultation call with me, and let's just talk about, you know, where you're at, where those voices at, and how can I support you in moving forward in the way that you can connect to all of those voices, but make peace with yourself and love yourself unconditionally, so that you can start healing from everything that is inside of you, so that you can take your power back, because that's what we're doing with all this work, is taking our power back. And that is the most loving and powerful thing we can do for ourselves. So if this has resonated with you, thumbs up. If you want to share it with another person, feel free to do so. And if you have any comments, I'd love to know, how has this, you know, what has it evoked for you? I think that's the question. What has this video evoked for you? And until the next time,